Healthy shame. Even saying that is kind of weird, but healthy shame does exist, and it's temporary and situational. It's a short-lived emotional experience which informs us about the beliefs or behaviors which may be guiding us astray or otherwise causing harm to ourselves or other people. Unhealthy shame, which is the shame that we're most accustomed to thinking of when we think about the state of shame, is neither temporary nor situational. It's chronic and crippling to the core. In a single sentence, unhealthy shame is a toxic, internalized trance which hypnotizes us into believing that we are polluted, worthless, or otherwise bad to the bone, doomed to a life of low self-worth and restricted access to the pleasures and happiness that other people seem to get to experience, but are not meant for us. In this episode of Inner Work Essentials, I not only want to dualistically separate unhealthy shame and healthy shame to create a bit of breathing room on your healing journey when it comes to healing internalized, shameful identity constructs, I actually want to illustrate the importance of mapping out the territory between these polarities, with shame operating on a spectrum, and with shame being both an emotional experience and an identity state at its most extreme and distorted. This is the shame-based identity of someone who has been repeatedly and systematically shamed throughout their childhood, or through a romantic relationship, or through a cultural institution. That's a shame-based identity, and that's over here in the unhealthy shame territory. I want to try and show you how we can pull back the energy which has been locked up in unconscious emotional rigidity and shameful holding patterns to actually re-experience shame once more, or maybe even for the first time ever, as this short-lived emotional experience which can actually be healthy. It's a crazy concept, right? It's something which really isn't spoken about when it comes to healing shame or releasing shame or letting go of emotional baggage. We kind of want to throw shame away as a default negative state because of how it's been used against us. And I fully understand this perspective, but it's not where I want to go in this video. I want to kick things off by introducing you to today's Inner Work Essential, which is by our main man John Bradshaw, whose book Homecoming I covered in a previous episode on inner child work. And that's healing the shame that binds you. If you can't guess, this book is about healing the shame that binds you. And the reason that I chose it for today's episode is not only because this book is easily one of the best books about navigating and understanding the experience of shame and the toxicity of shame when it becomes an internalized identity, but in all truth, it's just such an eye-opening book because of how many angles of representation or how many symptoms, secondary symptoms, John Bradshaw identifies as rooting from shame, or rooting into shame to be more accurate with my language. I want to start with a quote from Bradshaw about toxic shame itself, because this is where we typically start the conversation. We can't go to healthy shame and pulling back that energy unless we know where we're starting at. So let me read you a quote. So what is toxic shame? According to Bradshaw, toxic shame, the shame that binds us, is experienced as the all-pervasive sense that I am flawed and defective as a human being. Toxic shame is no longer an emotion that signals our limits. It is a state of being, a core identity. Toxic shame gives you a sense of worthlessness, a sense of failing and falling short as a human being. Toxic shame is a rupture of the self with the self. Wonderfully, wonderfully put there. Bradshaw has illuminated the key issue with shame, which is not only that we've taken a temporary emotional experience and internalized it as a core character trait in the same way that perhaps someone who is bound to states of anger would be an angry person that's confusing a temporary emotional expression with a core identifying factor. It's really tapping into this idea that shame becomes a heaviness, and shame almost becomes a void of low self-worth, which destroys the possibility for anything more beautiful or more pleasurable. But the healing journey from toxic shame to healthy shame is still not very clear. What I've learned from working with clients is that there's really only two elements to any healing journey from the foundational level. It's healing shame and it's establishing safety. And they actually come together because the chronically shameful child, which lives inside of us, let's say for thought experiment purposes, that chronically shameful child which experienced heavy doses of shame, so maybe they were short-lived emotional experiences, maybe they were a mother or a father saying, hey, don't do that, or you look like so-and-so when you do this, or I need you to believe this certain thing so that I can feel good about myself, maybe about my sexuality or about my intelligence. They're actually short-lived emotional states. It's a single argument, it's a single comment, but rarely in abusive households do we receive just the random moment. It's actually drip-fed throughout the days, throughout the weeks, and throughout the years. And of course, we can imagine that as children who are so receptive and sponge-like, we're almost swimming in that sea of shame. We can't properly distinguish any emotional texture that exists outside of that shame. And that's the key to understanding toxic shame, as Bradshaw labels it. I wouldn't necessarily go into the language of toxicity myself because I find that when talking about things like masculinity in previous episodes, and toxic masculinity in particular, to add that word of pollution, to add that word of poison onto something which has become internalized, doesn't help us to get away from the state which we're trying to release. It actually makes things worse. Let me explain what I mean. If someone's experiencing unhealthy shame as an identity construct, and if they're looking to release that so they can bring in more pleasure and more lightness and more joy, to add the phrase toxic when it's already internalized rapidly translates to I am toxic. There's yet to be that potential to see that it's the emotional state which is toxic, because any emotion by itself is neither good nor bad. It's a sensory experience. It's something which is happening in an electrical sense, something which is happening in an intellectual sense. I'm not going to go into the theory of emotions in this video, but you get what I'm saying, right? We know what an emotion is. When emotion becomes internalized, that's when it becomes problematic, because it becomes this foundation or this sea of information, metaphorically speaking, a sea of informational kind of perception around us, or hypervigilance that comes and consumes us, that prevents us from seeing how our identity is not the state which we are swimming in. If shame is a heavy, dense, sludge-like texture which wraps around us or kind of seeps into our bones and glues us between the joints, and we try and engage with the world from that place, we will be so shame-based that we won't even realize that things like our perfectionism, our workaholism, or maybe our sexual acting out all establish from that foundation of shame-based identity. This is toxic shame, but it doesn't mean that we're toxic when we're experiencing it. In fact, I hope that even in the last few minutes of trying to unravel this spectrum, you're already seeing that an emotion need not be internalized in that same hypnotic sense like it used to be in the past. Usually in transgressive situations, especially in abusive parent-child relationships, or maybe an abusive relationship, the abuser would like us to believe that we are the thing that they are accusing us of, but that's actually not the case. To reclaim healthy shame, to withdraw the energy from an identity construct, requires not only a cerebral awareness of the differences along that spectrum, but it also requires that safety element which I mentioned earlier. Safety and shame are the foundational underpinnings of any healing journey, any genuinely introspective inner working practice which takes multiple years to really complete or move towards wholeness. To establish safety when it comes to the healing of shame and releasing toxicity, we need to understand that shame operates both as belief and as physicality. So these are the belief systems which manifest as internal self-talk, but I would argue that the self-talk originates or arises from a nervous system which is inherently shame-bound. So what do we do? Well, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, would say that the way to get out of shameful states is to focus merely on the words. It's to focus on the kind of language which arises when we make a mistake, we make a blunder, maybe we screw up at work, or we didn't have the right level of composure in a relational argument with our partner, or maybe we just didn't get out of bed early enough in the morning and it kind of set our day off on the wrong track. What we need to do in regards to CBT perspective is change that language and maybe have a turnaround, which would be, I woke up late and therefore I am a shitty person, can become, I woke up late, with no reason to attach the I'm a shitty person. Or maybe in a work-related blunder, you could have the unfortunately shameful experience of, I screwed up with that contract and I'm probably going to get fired and I knew I was never any good at this to begin with. You can change that to, I made a mistake and everyone makes mistakes and I'm fine ultimately. Theoretically, this is fine. I don't think it works. It can't work. It can't possibly work if you are stuck in that hypnosis. Those words will not land to your core. The safety is not established. You're merely playing word games on a polluted foundation. So the way to heal that shame which is binding us is by working somatically, which is why in this series I frequently mention the body-based approach to healing, but not exclusively. It's doing both. I'm at a certain stage in my healing journey where these kinds of self-hating, internally destructive language patterns no longer exist for me. They kind of fell away about 1.5 years ago, which is crazy to even imagine. People who live in our society and who are conditioned in our society the same way that, of course, I was, rarely can see the possibility that we can be default compassionate towards ourselves, that we can create enough space between any emotional state which comes up, such as shame, anger, desire, jealousy, and not take that in compulsively and rapidly to somehow become an identity factor within us, to just let it pass through, like a cloud, or like some emotional experience which we're riding on or writhing in if it's a difficult experience, and just letting it through. This kind of does require a few years of meditative experience. It requires a more transpersonal perspective about our higher self and all the things that you'd expect. It's possible to get rid of that internal self-hating dialogue. It's impossible to get rid of the self-critic and all of those various horrific everyday experiences. But the way of doing that is by creating safety in the body. It's healing the shame which is in the body through things which are applying the opposite of shame, which in many ways is acceptance. It's accepting that we've done a thing, but we are not the thing, and supplying the love that we didn't get. To wrap up, and to sum back up into the core idea which I want to repeatedly bring to your attention, shame operates on a spectrum. We think of shame as being only unhealthy shame, this chronic and crippling experience which we've taken on as a core identity factor, which symptomatically expresses as things like workaholism, sexual dysfunction, or perfectionism, which are all attempts via a narrative structure to resolve the if I have this or if I do this, then I will be better, because I am bad to the core. That's how unhealthy shame loops us around into various secondary symptoms. The journey towards healthy shame is simultaneously releasing the identification, which is a process of detachment. It's very Buddhist-like, very stoic in some ways, but I think more mindfulness perspective-based. Releasing that attachment and getting to a point of acceptance where a single emotional state no longer becomes an identity. It no longer becomes an unconscious foundation from which we express ourselves in the world, or an unconscious foundation from which we talk to ourselves repeatedly on these self-destructive, uncompassionate spirals of shame. If that makes sense, if that's opened up the perspective, then we might as well go into the next big area that leads naturally on from shame, which is addiction. Addiction is arguably the main, I don't know if it's the main, there's many different manifestations and materializations of shame, but addiction is nonetheless an all-pervasive, everyday, symptomatic expression of shame. And if you want to learn how to heal from addictions by taking this shameful knowledge, or knowledge about shame, and I've said the word shame so many times I don't even know what I'm saying at this point. I'm not going to be shameful about it. It's a human experience. If you want to take this awareness of shame and apply it towards your everyday addictions in a way that releases them, then next episode of Inner Work Essentials, we're going to be exploring the mechanics of addiction from both this perspective and a higher perspective about our thirst for wholeness. I'll see you over there.